Today's video is all about the opportunities that you have as a driver in your sport. Hello to you, it's Enzo Mucci here. Welcome to another edition. I think it's episode 12 now of the season 2 of the Race Driver Coach Show. And what are we talking about today? Well, it was quite difficult actually to get my head around which question to answer today, because we've got about 48. I say about, but that's pretty damn precise, isn't it? 48 different questions. So I've got a bit of a backlog going on. And this, each time I come here, I look at the questions and I think, which one are we going to hit today? I feel like doing this specific question because maybe something's happened that day that reminds me of it. But this time, I'm delving down the list to a question that we had about 4 months ago. And the reason I didn't answer it to start with was because I thought this driver is just looking for shortcuts. They're just looking for the easy thing to do and, anything else. And maybe they're putting it on the job list they've already got and they don't need it. So I just ignored it for a little bit, knowing that I was going to answer it, but just not putting it as a priority. But then as I reviewed down this list of 48, I saw it and I thought, you know what? This driver's not after shortcuts. This driver is switched on. And I'll explain that after I read out the question that was sent to me by Eddie. Here it is. Enzo, like you preach, I do work hard on my craft, but I'm curious. From this year, what have you noticed drivers messing up on mostly? I ask this because I want to make sure that I'm doing things that other drivers are missing out on. Thanks, Eddie, for the question. Okay, I did judge it. I judged it too early because I've now seen what this question is really asking. What you're doing is you're looking at the whole market, the industry of motorsport, and specifically of drivers and what they're doing. And you're competing. I've already spoke to you. I know exactly what you're doing. You're competing and you want to know the cracks in all the other chinks, so to say, in the armor of all the other drivers, what they're missing out on, where you can capitalize and get in there and make sure that you are performing 10 out of 10 in the areas that other drivers are not performing 10 out of 10. They're underperforming. And that's perfect because you're looking at it just like any other company would. A company would look at an industry and spot the gaps. Spot the gaps where they can create the value, or should I say they can outperform their competition because the customers are wanting something but no one else is providing it. Kind of like you. So I'm going to answer this in two ways, really. I'm going to get very specific on the one thing that I've noticed this season that drivers are really tripping up on. And in doing so, it's really hurting them. It's holding them back in a way where it's so obvious in order for them to correct it, but they're just not. And that's 3 seasons. The last 3 seasons, I've seen this error, this mistake happen over and over and over again with drivers I'm with as well and others. And it's like, come on, guys. This is really obvious. This is 101 stuff. So let's get to that first. And then I'll do the global one, right? The global thing I'm seeing in the industry and what drivers are doing. First things first, it's the race starts. That's what I'm seeing most drivers mess up on. Now just think of this, right? There's certain critical points of a race weekend. You've got free practice when you've really got to make sure that you knuckle down on your driving and getting the car right. 2 things. It's all you care. Obviously learning the circuit, but that's part of getting your driving right. So you don't, just them 2 things, it's all you're focused on. You hit the ground running by doing your simulator training. So when you do get out on track in free practice 1 or the test day before the race weekend, in them first 10 minutes, you're already there. You already know what each corner's doing. You already know what to expect. And you're working on the things that you addressed in the simulator or in your debrief with the team or your coaches. So you do that, right? Drivers are not usually, they are, but it's not the main thing I'm seeing them mess up on. So you go through there, you make sure everything's ticked before you get into qualifying, and then you just deliver your best. Whatever that is at that point, your car and you come together and you say, this is where we're at this point. Here we go. Let's see where it gets us on the grid. And again, drivers are messing up in that area, but that's still not the area I want to speak about. I want to speak about the very start of each race, particularly standing starts. Let's talk about standing starts here. We go through a whole test plan up to a race season. So over the winter, you do the test plan. If you're lucky enough, you've got 10, 20, even 25 days if you really can afford it. Most people have got less than that, obviously. But if you have, I've still noticed that loads of drivers are still not practicing their starts. They're not prioritizing it. So then when they do get to the race season and they're at the first race weekend and they've done all that hard work, they've made sure they're driving in their cars there, then they're on the grid, the lights go out or go to green, whatever it is that starts your race, or the flag drops, or the siren sounds, and they mess up. So all that hard work of getting those positions has just been lost, and you're giving positions away. And then you become a bit anxious, and then you overdrive trying to catch up and get a bit stressed. And then in the second race, you're a bit more nervous then on the start. And what quite often happens is you do it again. You mess up the start. Now you're doing too many revs when before you didn't do enough. And then it compounds and it actually snowballs and makes things worse over the next few race weekends. When all of this was avoidable. All of this was avoidable if you just made sure that you prioritized learning race starts throughout the winter. Now this sounds stupidly basic, doesn't it? It really does, and it is. But that's going to lead me on to the global thing in a moment. But it's these things, race starts. I mean, I ask a race team sometimes in January, should we say, are we going to do race starts today? And so often they say, oh, I don't really want to break the clutch. You know, it's expensive to put a clutch in, or the drive shafts and all this. And I'm like, hang on, guys. What's important here? Is it important to save $1,000 or whatever on a clutch or more? Is that more important than the performance of the driver? Is that more important than getting into the driver's head and making sure that they're confident with the starts? Because I tell you what, this money that you're saving now because you're scared you might break a clutch because you do 3 or 4 starts at the end of the pit lane, what you're saving here is going to really hurt you long term. It's going to hurt you in 3 months when we're at that race weekend, and all the work everyone's doing is going to drop, and then it can carry on. Are you really that short-minded? And the answer is, all the way up, I'm talking about from Formula Ford all the way up to F2, and the same in the States. I'm seeing drivers and teams shortcut the money thing just because they think race starts are not that important. Do you realise how important race starts are? Take a look back to when Hamilton came to F1. In his very first season, he was killing everybody on the first lap. He woke the industry up. Verstappen was a little bit the same. He woke the industry up because it's like, wow, actually, this is the time to pounce. This is the time when all the cars are together, no matter what pace, even if you're not quite as quick as the cars in front. This is your chance to get in front. It's your only chance. You've got 2 laps, if that. And if you can beat them off the line, beat them to the first corner, overtake, be more switched on throughout that first lap and overtake, and make positions up, and then just spend the rest of the race, well, not even defending, just being in front of them, I think that's going to stand steady. It's going to give you a good chance of having a great race weekend. If you can also know that if qualifying didn't go too well, that you can rest on the fact that you're better than everyone else at the start, you're better than them, you're more switched on that first lap, it gives you such confidence. So why don't people do this? Why don't drivers spend more time on mastering and making sure they're at their best? Which again, Eddie's doing. Eddie's asking, what's everyone tripping up on? I'm going to make sure I'm the best, and I'm going to strangle them in that area. I want you to do the same. Everybody that's listening to this. Now, Eddie's asked something that's quite specific, and it's kind of like a secret, I suppose, but it's a philosophy of mine of making sure that you're better at the beginning. You pounce when everybody else is asleep. If they've been waiting all day and they've got a 3 p.m. race when they're not quite switched on, you make sure you are. If it's first thing in the morning, 8 a.m., and it's a race, again, you make sure that you outperform everybody on that first part of the race. You're there. which leads us kind of into mentally preparing for the race, which we spoke about in the last episode. But this one is specifically about the skill. I want all of you drivers to make sure that you don't let race teams bully you into thinking it's better to save money now, not burn a clutch out, for you to not learn the craft of racing and starting this particular car, because it might be a new car. I want you to make it a priority. Make sure they give you at least 10 starts before the season starts. And even at the race weekend, because it's going to be different rubber that's on the track. Even at the race weekend, just do 1 or 2 in the free practice at the very end of the free practice or something to get you with the new way, you know, the way the clutch feels now, the biting point. If the clutch allows more than 1 start. If it's got the birds singing outside. If it's dragster racing, you can't really do that. But if it's dragster racing, you know how important it is. I'll tell you what, it's like being a 100-meter sprinter or a 200 or 400-meter sprinter, mostly 100. And you not spending time on practicing how to get out the blocks. Quite important, right? Okay, if you're at Usain Bolt and you've got these big long legs and you've got this massive amount of skill and speed, you can lose a little bit of time coming out the blocks because you're so big yourself, but then you accelerate past them. But in racing, we don't normally have that engine advantage. So we have to make sure we get the jump. A little bit like when you're watching football. It's a bit apt because the World Cup's on right now. You're watching football and you're a defender and the attackers got a bit of a run on you. Just a slight bit, just a slight 2-mile-an-hour run momentum on you, and you have to turn and go. They're gone before you even blink. You have to foul them to bring them down, and then that's the only way you can answer it. It's similar to when you're starting the race. If you feel confident at the beginning, if you know you've got this down, you know the skill of starting this car better than everyone else, and you just feel cocky about it even. It's amazing how you go into the race week, into the actual race itself. Warming the tyres up, you feel pretty good about yourself, and you're already picking out where you're going to go. You're already trying it on the warm-up lap about going on the inside here. Yeah, that works. You're in a different mindset. So before the race season starts, I'd say more specifically, get your race starts down. One more thing. Before we move on, I've been on my phone. I've downloaded all the different videos I've got over the years of us doing race starts. And I just wanted to put this compilation together so you can see this is us practicing race starts. Take a look. Now, on a global level, you will say race starts is pretty damn obvious. It's a fundamental about, there's certain things you have to do in order to win a race. You have to be good at the start and everything else. It's just a part of it. But it's the fundamentals. This is now answering your question, Eddie, on a global scale. It's these types of basic fundamentals that people are forgetting. They're not seeing the race of how you win a race. All right, let's just say the race win is the goal at the top. They're not then reverse engineering all these bricks that have got to be put on top of each other to get that win at the top. And they're crumbling on the first one. Okay, qualifying's underneath, done that. But the race start is a block on its own. And the first lap, your performance, when everyone else again is asleep, is really important. And I can see people doing it everywhere with their sponsorship. They've got the big goal of the sponsorship, but all these blocks that have to be put in place in order to hold that goal up, in order to achieve that height of that goal, they're not being done. It could be I'm not making sure I'm in the right mindset. It could be I haven't learnt sales. I haven't learnt business. I don't know how to even put a proposal together. All these blocks, they're not reverse engineering it and making sure that they're ticking all these boxes before they get up there. And that, I would say, globally, again, on a grand scale, is what most drivers are letting themselves down. They want this, they want to achieve this thing, right? But they're not doing the things that they need to in order to achieve that thing. And it sounds so crazy. And when somebody asks you about what you're trying to achieve, and then they start to say, have you done this, have you done that, have you done this, the other, it's amazing how you're like, oh God, maybe I'm not actually working that hard at all. So I think Eddie and everybody out there, to capitalize, to take this opportunity and make sure you destroy all the other buggers out there, you absolutely nail them, is to make sure that you're doing all these blocks, you're doing all the fundamentals. What have I got to do today? Okay, what is my main goal this year? Bring it down to all the things that have got to be done, the blocks again. How can I do them this month? What's the goal for this month? Again, reverse engineer that down. What have I got to do this week? By this time next week, I want to have X achieved. And you reverse engineer that. And it's getting smaller and more specific each time. And then you bring it right down to the day. How can I win this day? And even if it's a school timetable, you write it out. I'm going to do 2 hours of this. I'm going to do 2 hours of sponsorship, that. I'm going to call these people. And you do this on a Sunday and just plan out your week, what you're going to do tomorrow, the next day. That's like preparing for a race weekend. Then you will not miss out on the opportunities. You will not miss out on all these things that other drivers are, the obvious stuff. And even when you watch a high-profile race, all professional drivers, like in Formula 1, you still see pretty fundamental mistakes, right? Errors that are obvious because they haven't paid attention to them. Even at that level, honestly, it's still happening. You think they're brilliant and all this, but they're making such basic mistakes. So I would say it's that, really. Let's just bring things down, make things very, very simple, like I always tell you, and work on them. What are the non-negotiables? That's really the way to look at it. If I want to achieve that goal, what are the non-negotiables that I must excel at, I must do? That's the kind of way you want to look at your racing. That's to Eddie and everyone else. And I make sure that you set your week up thinking like that. What have I got to do? When am I going to do it? What are you waiting for? That's it. Now get on, make it simple, and go do it.